Okay, so 2025 has definitely been a year. Lots of shit has definitely happened, more so what's felt like bad and terrible things, with people hating on each other more, lots of internet drama stuff, AI getting even more advanced to the point that it's now getting harder to discern what is and isn't AI generated, people relying too much on AI that they're getting dumber, and worst of all, I barely posted any videos this year. I know, how tragic. So instead of talking about all the bad and gloomy stuff, I thought I'd lighten the mood for this video by instead talking about all the good stuff from this year. Or I guess I should say the things that I liked in 2025, because, you know, it has to be about me, bitch. So if you're wondering how this video is going to be formatted, well, first off, let me explain things. Jeez. I don't know why I'm being so hostile, I'm so sorry. But this, of course, isn't an original idea. I mean, if you've seen Super Eyepatch Wolf's favorite things in blank video series, or any other YouTuber that's done something remotely similar, then it's sort of gonna be like that, at least in the first part. Yes, there's gonna be two different parts in this video, with the first being a speed round of the media I enjoyed that came out this year, as well as stuff that, while they didn't come out this year, I did check out this year. The reason why I'm speeding through them, or at least will try to, is because they're sort of the honorable mentions, so things I liked but not so much compared to the stuff in the second part. Which is gonna lead me to explaining how that'll work. So for the second part, this will only include stuff that came out this year, and I'll be going more into depth as to why I chose that specifically, and hopefully I don't go on too long yapping about them, but, you know, no promises. They'll be formatted in a 3x3 style, which, again, isn't an original thing. I just took this from Trash Taste, which they also took from an old internet trend, so, you know, originality, people. If I didn't explain that well, then, well, you'll probably get it as we go on, so enough yapping, it's time for my favorite things in 2025! Yay! Alright, focus S, let's go. I've been keeping up with Dr. Stone ever since its anime debut, and then from there on it's manga on the side, and I've just been hooked. Since then, the manga has been finished since 2022. Damn. But of course the anime is still ongoing, with it getting into its new arc, Future Wars last year. 2024 that is. And I will say, I forgot how much I liked this arc. Instead of having to face off against non-science users like Senku has been, this time he meets his match as he has to face another scientist, Dr. Zeno, which is revealed that he was sort of his mentor. The mind games, tension, and suspense is amped up during the first part of the arc, and it's just a fun time to watch, and the same can be said for the second part that has come out this year. The intensity goes up as Senku is being hunted by Stanley, and then they have their all-or-nothing battle halfway through the season. It's just overall nice. The show, of course, may not have any insane animation that helps make it stand out, but I still think that after all these years watching it, that the story and content continues to get better. I mean, what made me put this on the list was the last few episodes with Suika. I won't say much to avoid spoilers, but it gets really emotional, and the animators as well as the voice actress really capture that emotion that makes it, again, emotional. It really emphasizes the core theme of the show, with that being how amazing humans are able to adapt and overcome obstacles with the power of science. If you drop the show at some point, I'd say give it another shot because it just keeps getting better and better. Plus, the next season will probably be its last one, and honestly, I can't wait to see how the anime delivers on that. Now, before all the Expedition 33 fans get upset that I don't have this on the other section, I do want to say that I do like this game. I did like the cast for the most part, with my favorite characters being Verso and Eskie. Like, damn, Ben Starr does it again with Verso. Love that guy. The combat is really fun with the inclusion of the parry, dodge, and counter mechanics, and look, I know, it's not the first turn-based JRPG that have those mechanics, and I've seen some people bringing up the Mario Luigi games as having those sorts of mechanics before it, but it's important to recognize that it's introducing it to a newer audience, and hopefully more JRPGs can see that and implement it in some way to garner interest for new people to get into the genre. At least that's my take on it, since it's getting all this sort of popularity and glazing and like this entire discussion. Moving past that though, the music is stellar, I don't think I have to say much on that. And the world and environment is so unique and fascinating. Even though you could probably lump it with the other games that have the realistic style and probably not know that it's Expedition 33. You know, kind of like that meme that people post about realistic Unreal Engine games. You know, Focus M and all that shit. But the game is fun and is something that people should try out because it was made by fans of JRPGs for JRPG fans. Now, with this much glazing, you might start to wonder even more now why this wasn't in my 3x3. And, well, it's mainly because I didn't completely fuck with it. Again, I want to reiterate that I don't think the game is bad at all, but as I was playing and experiencing the story, I just didn't vibe with it as much as others did. Slight spoilers, by the way, but every time something was revealed, it was always because there was something Verso was just keeping hidden from the party, and the party just accepted it. Like, yes, they eventually got tired of him keeping those secrets, but he just kept keeping secrets from them, and they were just fine with it, and I just found that to be a bit tiring. That might be a bad critique, as I do very much understand the point of the story, in that the entire family is pretty much broken, but I don't know, it just didn't impact me as much. But again, for one last time, that isn't to say that I find this game to be trash or anything. It's a very good game, and I honestly can't wait to see what else this team makes. Also, cutting in here for just a second about Expedition 33, and related to the Game Awards as well, kind of dating this, but yeah. But if you watched it, then yeah. Seeing lots of people hating on the game now, which I do hope that most of it are jokes, because obviously the hate is unwarranted. I mean, all I'll add is that I also don't think it should have won that many awards or won certain categories, but the team in the game do not deserve any of the vitriol hate that they're getting, like, at all. Though I will say, the memes and saltiness of people, that was funny. Now moving on to Peacemaker Season 2, and alright, now this might be out of the blue as I don't think I've talked about anything outside of anime and gaming, aside from like a joke here and there, but when it comes to superhero media, I've kind of fallen off of it mainly because of the fatigue I've gotten from the genre. Yes, I know you've all heard the buzzword before, superhero/Marvel fatigue, but it's genuinely a real thing. The only superhero-related stuff that I can stomach as of lately is Invincible and The Boys, and that's just because of how different they are from your Marvel and DC shows/movies. Which begs the question, if I'm tired of superheroes, then why watch Peacemaker, a DC show? And well, I'm not even sure myself. It was honestly a spur-of-the-moment pick out of just wanting to watch something. So earlier this year, I decided to just watch it, and I absolutely fell in love with it. John Cena playing as his villain, or I guess anti-hero? Whichever way you want to see him as before the start of the show. Who's trying to get back to the routine of things after the events of the Suicide Squad and show their worth is really good. He pretty much continues to show how much of a good actor he can really be, and the rest of the cast are just as good. Also, I really love the intro more than I thought I would. Sometimes I just find myself singing it out of just randomness. But Season 1 isn't the focus. Season 2 is. Season 2 continues to build off of what happens in Season 1, and while yes, this season is just kinda meant to be a bridge for the second Superman movie, I really love how it also focuses more on the friendship and relationships of the characters, and their progression, as well as trying to humanize Chris more as he's trying to become a better person overall. One of the other main things that is the central focus of this season is Chris's guilt of the people he's pushed away and inadvertently killed, while again trying to reform himself to become a better person. And this downward spiral he finds himself in when he finds his other dimension, where his brother and dad are not only alive, but good people as well. Look, I know what you're gonna say, but I'm just trying not to spoil things here, okay? But it's such a good watch with a really nice and mostly bittersweet ending, which I know people have said that it was a bad and very anticlimactic ending, but I really do think it's a fitting and good ending. Bravo, James Gunn. Bravo. K-pop Demon Hunters. I don't think there's much that needs to be said about this movie, other than before watching it, I had zero expectations, and I thought it was going to be a very mid-movie. Especially seeing the type of humor it was going with in the trailers, but after seeing it, I gotta say, it's a very nice movie. I personally wouldn't put it on my top 10 list, hence why it's on my 3x3, but I can say that I really enjoyed it. Hell, I even went to a tea shop that was doing a collab with the movie with some friends of mine, and I had a good time. Though it is sort of surprising to see how this was such a massive hit, and deservedly so. I don't know how to end this other than saying, Soda Pop is a good song. If you've been an active reader of Shonen Jump a while back, or at least active in the any manga community, there's a chance that you might have heard about or even remember a manga called Time Paradox Ghostwriter. This manga didn't last long with only having 14 chapters, and its reasoning for its cancellation varies from person to person, as at the time, the premise for the manga was pretty controversial. The premise is that we follow a young aspiring mangaka named Teppei, who's trying to get a series published in Shonen Jump, but every idea he comes in with gets rejected, until one day, on a stormy day, lightning crashes on his place, and in the microwave, he finds an issue of Jump magazine that's from 10 years in the future. Teppei reads through it and finds a manga that moves him so deeply that the next day when the magazine seemingly disappears, thinking that it was a sign, copies the manga from his memory and submits it as his own work. It of course gets accepted and published. However, somewhere else in Japan, a girl reads through the latest issue of Jump and sees that the manga that she was planning to make was in that same issue, but in someone else's name. So yeah, the protagonist in this manga commits the cardinal sin of plagiarism, and this was the controversial topic that people assumed for it to be cancelled. Now, I know I went into detail about this manga, but it's not the one I'm talking about today. Instead, that's Kuremizawa's Folly. It kinda has the same premise of someone taking credit for someone else's work, but instead of some Steins Gate type shit, it's some good old manipulation and abuse of power. I won't waste more time, but it's a really interesting read where it gives the protagonist more of a reason as to why he decides to steal someone else's work. It so far has built a great sense of tension of the protagonist trying to hide this fact from the person he's taking the work from and the publishers. Also, it has a really nice art style that's reminiscent of manga from the 70s, which makes sense since it takes place during that time. The manga is freshly new with it having a few chapters, so it won't take long for you to catch up and decide whether or not you want to keep reading, and hopefully it doesn't get cancelled like the manga I was talking about earlier. In 2025, I've been getting a bit more into horror media, even though I'm a bit of a scaredy cat. I always found the genre to be interesting and filled with potential to explore certain ideas, which some have to massive success, while others not so much, with either being a flop or just a bit underwhelming. What I'm about to talk about isn't the second one, though being a massive success, well, it's probably still a bit too early to say. The Creepy and Freaky is a horror manga that follows this frog creature thing named, oh god, Grinoil. Grinoil? I don't know. This. In a cutesy world where nothing bad is totally happening. Okay, look. I know the cutesy appearance to hide the horror isn't an original thing, but this manga sort of changes that idea, sort of, as instead of it being that the cutesy characters are the horror itself, the horror is part of the short stories that the character Mr. Rabbit shares. So it kind of frames it as an anthology of short scary stories, sort of like the show Are You Afraid of the Dark, but, you know, not for kids. At least that's what it frames itself as at first, until you then start to notice that they're more closely related than they appear to be. Another thing is the simplicity of the art style, which works to the manga's advantage as it kind of makes you lower your guard until something unexpected happens, and it gives you a bit of a fright. And what's cool about the scary parts is that they aren't just jump scares or creepy page turns, which, okay, for that it does have, but the mangaka is really creative with the way they approach the horror in this manga, with some of them being fourth wall breaking or even leaving you with dark, thought-provoking questions. It's sort of hard to explain the horror it tries to go for, but it's definitely an interesting read if you're into horror manga in general. Okay, shifting mediums again to video games this time, or once again, and something more lighthearted. As you know, the Nintendo Switch 2 came out this year with quite a lot of discussions revolving around it, from the pricing of the system and games, the lack of exclusive games for the first year, to even its worth of purchasing. Now, being the consumer I am and sort of wanting to have the new shiny thing to replace my old Switch, I did buy a Switch 2. You can laugh and make fun of me as much as you want, but for now, I am currently enjoying the system. But that doesn't mean I think it's a product that's currently worth getting. I would say wait for a price drop if that ever happens, cause, you know, RAM, or just wait for a game that you're really wanting to play. But I'm not talking about the system right now, rather the second exclusive game for it, Donkey Kong Bonanza. I'm just gonna go ahead and say I really like this game. I love smashing things, I love the collectathon of getting the bananas, and the soundtrack is pretty solid. It's a all-around well-polished game. I would even go so far to say that it deserved to be a launch title for the Switch 2, though that is not to say that I don't know why they chose Mario Kart World instead. It's perfectly clear as to why. But as much as I did enjoy Donkey Kong, I will say it did kind of become stale for me near the end, but again, I did overall enjoy the game. It's just that it didn't impress me enough to be in the 3x3, but again, it's still a good game. Okay, this is gonna be a rough one. Look, I know Pokemon currently is in this rough patch, and I can agree, they aren't completely good, they have their issues. Some will say that the recent games, including this one, ZA, are slop. But you know what? I enjoy a bit of slop. And I know you all have that one show, game, or series that you know isn't good, but you just enjoy the slop, because why not? And right now, that's Pokemon for me. When I play them, it's really easy for me to just turn off my brain and just enjoy the mindless fun. I enjoyed catching and filling up my Pokédex in ZA, even though I didn't get a cool reward for doing so. Which, okay, honestly, that actually pissed me the fuck off. I don't know how Game Freak perfected slop, but I'm there for it for some reason. Okay, joking aside, I did actually enjoy the new Legends game. It's really cool that the story of X and Y got further expanded upon, with the story taking place 5 years after those games. Getting to see the old cast was really cool, though also sad that a few of them had nothing to do with the bigger narrative. Also, I shockingly loved most of the new cast, with my favorites being Corbo, Ivor, and Canary. I also liked that they were pretty fleshed out, which kind of surprised me. I don't know if I should be or not, I don't know. The new battle mechanic at first seemed really cool, but as you play more, you start to realize that doing the whole movement thing doesn't really matter. Though I guess it only does if you're playing against another player, though I don't know how much more. So as much as there is to criticize Game Freak's current handling with the Pokemon franchise, they're still somehow able to keep the game mindlessly enjoyable for the better or worse. Actually, no, it's definitely for the worse, and only Pokemon fans like me can actually tolerate this shit somehow. Back to talking about anime, we're talking about Kamen Rider. Okay, maybe not that Kamen Rider, but this one. This middle-aged, washed-up old man who wants to be Kamen Rider. God, I hate how much I'm almost able to relate to him. Tojima wants to be Kamen Rider. The title pretty much says it all. This near 40-year-old man wants to be Kamen Rider. However, reality says no, because it's fiction. But this is anime, goddammit, so of course in this world, the evil organization Shocker exists, allowing him to fulfill his dream of becoming Kamen Rider. This anime is as anime as it can get. You have the wacky premise, big booba anime women, the fan service, and the good fun, aside from what I just mentioned. It's also a show I feel like is a good gateway into getting into the Kamen Rider series, and that's coming from someone who isn't a Kamen Rider fan yet. The show just feels beginner-friendly, as it doesn't feel like you need to have this complete knowledge of the series to understand what's going on, as I feel like it tells you just enough to know what's going on, but I'm sure if you have that preconceived knowledge, then you'll enjoy the show even more. It's just a fun ride of a show, and again, if you're ever interested into getting into the Kamen Rider series, then this is probably a good starting point before jumping into the main series. Imagine being back in middle school again. Though if you're currently in middle school, imagine you're in a Japanese middle school. You're trying to change up your lifestyle to be a better person, but uh-oh, you get a sudden visit from Truck-kun after trying to save a cat. Though instead of being isekai like a loser, you just end up in a coma for 15 years and it's suddenly 2025. Bro really missed Among Us, Skibidi Toilet, and AI Slop. And everything seems to be fine. Aside from the huge changes in society, like the absolute state of the current political leader, all of the awful things happening around the world, and the appearance of a weird political party that introduces thousands of surveillance cameras in your country for not only them to spy on you, but as well as everyone else so that they can judge you for your deeds. And if they deem you to be a good person, your social status goes up, making your adult rank go higher. But if you do something wrong, that ranking will go down, heavily affecting your status and the rights you hold as an adult. So, essentially China's social credit system, but even more dystopian. That is War of the Adults, another very interesting manga with another interesting premise where you have this kid who has his own idea of what it means to be an adult, only for that idea to be taken by someone else who was inspired by the kid's actions and for it to be twisted into something corrupt. I know I keep saying this a lot and not giving a great explanation on my thoughts, but I also do enjoy this manga. It's interesting to see how this new society works, along with its social rankings and the ongoing mystery on how this political party got into power, and their overall motive keeps me engaged. If you don't take my word on this being good, then there's also the fact that it was nominated in the next manga award. Sure, it wasn't ranked high, but at least being nominated has to count for something, right? But, as I've been constantly saying, I recommend checking this one out. Alrighty, so I will admit that I am cheating with this one. That's because I haven't finished this game, nor am I really far into it. I'm still around the beginning section, but I will say that I'm currently having fun with it. I've recently been interested in getting into the Legend of Heroes series, mainly due to how often I hear how peak it is. I did buy the first game a while back, the original that is, but I never found the right time to play it, and wouldn't you know it? A year after I bought it, the remake for it was announced, so I really fucked myself with that one. But again, I have enjoyed the little that I played and I'm excited to finally get back on it. If I do decide to make another video like this, then I'll definitely make sure to mention it there. And hopefully along with the remake of the sequel, because of course they announced that with it also coming out soon. I'm excited, but goddammit. Now hear me out. Anime, but Chinese. To Be Hero X was a huge surprise this year for not only its interesting superhero anthology premise that eventually comes together to tell one single narrative, but also for its insane switching of animation styles, with the show nicely swapping between arcane levels of animation to 2D, giving the show its own unique identity that left people speechless. You can really see the effort that the animators who worked on this show put in, and it makes you want to see what sorts of other shows that China could come out with, while also seeing whether or not some Japanese studios will see what To Be Hero X has done and replicate it or improve upon it. As for the show itself, since it's an anthology, some of the characters we follow will have some pretty interesting stories, like the first one we follow in Ghostblade. Though some of them aren't going to be perfect, with some of them making you lose some steam, but thankfully for those, we don't have to follow them for too long. It was fun to see how one character's decision or action would consequently impact another without their knowing. Or if not the character, then the hero association in some way. Oh, and how can I forget about the interesting power system with how one's popularity determines their strength and power. I don't think I've seen a show have that sort of power system, aside from like Chainsaw Man having something similar but in a different manner. But once again, it was a really fun show, and again, as I've been saying, I highly recommend it. Though if you do decide to watch it, when you look up the name, some other shows similar that take place, I guess, in the same world will show up, but they aren't related to To Be Hero X, as far as I know, so you could completely just start with this one and enjoy it through. Alrighty, now it's time to get into the stuff that, while it didn't come out this year, I got into / am still engaging with this year. If you read Kagurabachi and are caught up to its latest chapter, then not much needs to be said. Without spoiling, twist has been revealed, shit still continues to get insane or ramp up, and Hokuzono continues to show off his insane art skills and compositioning. Even though the manga has been running for like 2 years now, it still manages to impress me and keep me anticipating for the next chapter, like absolute Hokuzono. Remember how I mentioned I was getting more into horror media earlier? Well, I finally got around to playing one of gaming's horror classic, Silent Hill 2, the remake. Look, I know it's a bit of a hot topic when we're talking about a remake of a game because there's always the many arguments of which one is the better version, the discussion of whether the remake is warranted at all, and the discussion of is the remake trying to replace the original. And I will say, these are mostly valid discussions to have about remakes or remasters of games. But with that being said, I can't really have that discussion, nor am I trying to make that the focus right now. The remake is the only experience I have with Silent Hill 2, so judging it as its own thing, I personally really like the game. Again, people are probably going to have different opinions than me, but I was completely immersed with the world. The creepy and eeriness of the game did scare me at times, and there were times where I had to put the controller down just to compose myself because I was just frightened. So yes, while it may not capture the same feeling as the original, I do think this game stands as a good remake and as something that people should try out. Whether it's their first time experiencing the story or if they've already experienced it. And when I say this isn't me trying to say that people should completely ignore the original game. People should definitely try out the classic one as well. But I do think that if you were always tempted to get into the series, then this is also a good starting point, as it were for me. From the person who wrote Golden Kamuy comes a new sports manga of a sport that I'm unsure has ever been the subject of a manga, that sport being hockey. Dogs Red starts with introducing us with Ro, a middle schooler who's also a well-known figure skater in the middle of a competition. We then get told about his mother who recently died in a car crash, and that she was a heavy supporter of his figure skating career. He then manages to win the competition with an astounding score to his joy. However, immediately after, he begins lashing out, effectively getting him suspended from the sport. Though after some self-reflection when moving to Hokkaido, he finds a new sport that he finds fun in: hockey. If you're someone who's really into sports manga, then this is definitely something to pick up. I even want to say that this story could become a classic, but it's kinda hard to tell as, from what I've read, the story feels like it's still right around the starting line, even though it currently has around 60 chapters or so. I know I'm essentially not saying much to convince you to read it, as I'm trying to be quick with this, but again, I highly recommend it. I think it's no secret that I love Nikkei. Yes, you may call it a Gunner game, which it kinda is, but when talking about the story, it's something else, in a good way. The game just celebrated its 3rd anniversary, which is crazy to think that I've been keeping up with this game for that long, but then I remember how good it is with every new story update that releases, as well as the major events. Without spoiling much, the chapters and anniversary events went insane and revealed a bunch of things. I just can't wait to see what's in store in 2026 for this game. Though I will admit I am feeling a bit burnt out from the game, but again, I still cherish and love this game for everything that it is. I love the art, I love the merch, I love the cosplays, and I even picked up a card game because it collabed with Nikkei. Again, my love for this game is unfathomable, and I just can't wait to keep playing it and experiencing this just game. A bit of an oldie, but I picked up SteamWorld Dig 2 up on a whim because it was on sale, and I don't regret my purchase at all. I had an absolute blast with this game. Like, when I tell you that I could not put this game down, I mean it. But I will admit, this isn't my first rodeo with this game. If I remember correctly, I remember originally playing it a bit on the Google Stadia, if anyone remembers that garbage. But I never played more than like 30 minutes on it because, well, it's the Google Stadia. But flash forward to like 2025 and I beat it within like a week because, again, I was just that engrossed in it. If I had to make a comparison to sell it to someone, I would say Metroidvania meets Minecraft. Does that fit? I don't know, you let me know as we move on. Late in 2025, Perfect Blue by the famous Satoshi Kon had a 4K release in theaters. That is not how I experienced this movie, sadly. But earlier this year, I did finally watch this movie, and I absolutely loved it. I don't know what else could be said about this movie that hasn't been said. I love how the movie messes with you with not knowing what aspects of the story is real. The psychological horror is very effective with, again, messing with you. And the twist was a great surprise that I didn't really see coming. If you're familiar with Satoshi Kon's works, and you haven't seen Perfect Blue, like me, or haven't seen his other works, you're doing a disservice to yourself. They're something else, man. Alright, it took a while, but now it's finally time to move on to the second part of the video, where we finally get to the 3x3 of what I really enjoyed the most from 2025. So in this part, I'll be going a little bit more in depth as to why I enjoyed these things. Will it be coherent? Probably not, but that's par for the course when it comes to me. And if you made it this far, YouTube spiel, do all that, let's move on. To start off this 3x3, I'll be talking about the game that everyone thought would never come out, but finally did. No, not GTA 6, that game is never coming out, come on, let's be real. I'm talking about Silksong, the sequel, or I guess it's better to say the second entry to Hollow Knight. There's no need for me to give it an introduction. The hype and anticipation for this game could not be undermined, so when it was revealed that it was finally coming out this year, Twitter erupted as it felt surreal to hear that news. But of course we all know this, so the real question to ask is, did the game live up to the hype? For most, yes. Others, kinda. For me though, I enjoyed it. Let me be clear. Before its release and even its announcement, back when the internet was doing its thing and begging for its release, I wasn't there begging along with everyone else. And I don't mean for this to come off as me trying to act better than everyone, because I did want to play this game as well, but it wasn't really up there as one of my most anticipated games. I mean, I did enjoy Hollow Knight back when I played it around 2020, and when I heard that Silksong was a thing being worked on, I had a smile on my face knowing that someday I get to play more Hollow Knight. But again, it wasn't something that I desperately wanted to play as much as everyone else on the internet did, but when the game did come out, I did buy it on release and played it later that day. I just couldn't believe that I was actually playing Silksong. I had a blast exploring this new world, facing new challenging enemies and bosses, and getting frustrated all over again. The soundtrack was really nice to listen to, and the art was as fantastic as always. Now, as much as I do like this game, I will admit that I haven't actually fully completed the game yet. I did get the first ending for the game that most will experience, but as far as I know, there's 2 more endings to get, and getting them opens the world even more, with there being more places to discover and explore. Team Cherry went all out on adding so much content for this game, and they're not even done yet, as they sort of announced that there's going to be some free DLC that adds even more stuff. Went on a bit of a tangent there, but going back to what I was saying, yes, I haven't fully completed the game yet by getting its true ending, and it is something that I do want to eventually go back to, but when I did get that first ending, I just felt satisfied with that. Again, no hate for the game, but something in my brain just left feeling satisfied enough to say that my time here is done. It was time for me to clock out. Though part of it probably has to do with me wanting to get through with some of my backlog that I sort of accumulated throughout the year, but reflecting on the game a bit, I do want to go back and try to get the true ending, and even try out the DLC later. But let's be real, no one cares about my feelings about the overall game. All you probably care about is whether or not I found this game to be difficult. And well, to answer that, kinda. I mean, there were a few bosses that I did sort of struggle with, but I didn't really find myself feeling stuck at a particular boss, as the most I probably died to a boss was probably 15 times, but that's roughly estimating as I never kept track of my deaths. So for my opinion on the whole debate when this game came out on whether or not the game was too difficult, I think it lies somewhere in the middle, but maybe more so on the harder side of things. I do think that the game expects you to have played Hollow Knight before, as it does kind of feel like it's meant to be a step up in difficulty, but I do also think that the game does provide enough for the player to help them with their journey. Though, only if they bother to take the time to explore the world because, it's a Metroidvania. So overall, a really fun game that I do want to go back to and play, and the game is very piss baby easy. Go cry about it. That's very mean of me. Time for number 8 on the list, and I didn't realize to turn this into a top 10 list, but this one is completely different from what I've been talking about this entire video, and it's going to be the only one. But this one is for something in real life that I went to. That being the Auto's Hibana concert, which was an experience and a blast. Before I do talk about my experience going to this concert though, I do want to preface this by saying that I'm not completely a music person. When I say that, I don't mean that I hate music or anything, obviously. I just mean that when it comes to my thoughts and opinions on music, it isn't that deep for me. The only thing you'll get from me when talking about music is whether it sounds good or not, or if it makes me nod my head or not. Anything deeper than that, like talking about the use of instruments, how the chorus sounds really nice, or the editing of the music, none of that will register in my head. Okay, with that out of the way, there's one more thing. Before going to this concert, I wasn't a fan of Otto. I was only aware of some of the songs that she made, the main one being Usewa, which of course I would've, that's like the popular one. So you'd probably wonder why I decided to pay good money to go to an artist's concert that I barely knew about. And, well, to boil it down, it was just a whim decision me and my friends made since we sort of knew who she was because of her songs in One Piece film Red. On top of that, this would have been my first official concert that I would have gone to. I have been to other musical events like the Final Fantasy Rebirth Orchestra and a few concerts, I say that with quotes, at conventions, but I'm not sure if I would compare them similarly to this concert where it was at a whole venue. Probably a bad comparison, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. So, what were my thoughts on the concert and Otto's music? Well, again, before the concert, I was somewhat unfamiliar with her discography, but after the concert, I could definitely say that I am now a fan. There were some songs that she played during it that I was familiar with, like Usewa and most of the film Red songs, and they were songs that I enjoyed, but man, hearing it live just felt different. I don't know if it was just the feeling of being there surrounded by other Otto fans who were excited or what, but again, it just felt sick as hell. Another thing I've been aware of about Otto is her insane vocal range when singing, and actually getting to hear it live left me amazed at her talent. So getting to see her live made me further understand why she's been getting so popular as of lately. The concert was such an amazing experience that I'm glad that I decided to go, as well as glad that she was able to come perform in my state, which made it really convenient. So if she ever decides to visit the States again and come back to my neck of the woods, I'll be more than happy to go again, but this time as a fan. Next on the 3x3 is sadly going to be the last video game, which personally took me by surprise, as I thought I was going to put one or two more games from 2025 that I would have really loved to put here, but I guess not. Granted, most of the games I did play in 2025 were mainly games from my backlog from the previous year, or games that I've wanted to play for some time. But exposing myself as a fake gamer aside, the last game on the list is... When it comes to video game industry icons, Hideo Kojima of course does not need any introductions. His games pretty much speak for themselves. And if you're aware of Kojima and his work after leaving Konami, then you'll know that he opened his own studio and released Death Stranding. Back when Death Stranding came out, it was an extremely polarizing game where you would have one side of the gaming community as well as some Kojima fans disliking the game because of his decisions with the gameplay. Which, if you're unaware, somehow, the main gameplay loop is you playing as Norman Reedus, going around delivering packages. It sounds strange and something that wouldn't seem fun to play, and you'll definitely feel that at first, but as you progress further in the game and taking in the setting of the story and the world, you get that Danny DeVito moment of getting it. One issue I do sort of find in modern open world games is how empty they sometimes feel. Sure, they'll try to fill in the map with certain collectibles to distract you from the overall emptiness, while also trying to showcase specific areas that look nice, but you still eventually feel a sense of complete isolation, as there's nobody to interact with aside from like the rare towns that you'll eventually find. The only game that I could think of that does this sort of thing and it kinda works is Breath of the Wild, as the lack of interaction with NPCs makes sense in the context of the world. And you're not really left just having moments of nothing happening, as there's several things laid out in the map that distracts you from your main task, letting you naturally discover things on your own, whether that be finding some special crafting items, a Korok puzzle, or a shrine for you to complete. Now, how does this connect to Death Stranding? Well, while yes, the world is completely empty with there being nothing to do, so no Ubisoft checklist of collectibles to collect or random side quests to find, all of this is made with the intent to fit in with the narrative. This feeling of isolation is reflected not only through the state of the world due to the Death Stranding, but also through the protagonist, Sam, and his rejection of forming connections with other people. So much so that he has haphophobia, the fear of letting people touch him. So having to explore this completely empty world with this mindset, having no one to talk to or interact with, aside from the people you have to talk to when setting up and delivering your deliveries, makes complete sense and works. Then as you progress with the narrative, with Sam opening up little by little, forming all of these connections, connecting America, it all works in tandem with the gameplay. As the more shelters you connect, the more you're able to do in the world by building all these structures to help make navigating easier, to make your deliveries faster. And it's not only your structures that you'll be able to make and see, but as well as from other people who have been kind enough to build something or contributed to a structure to make your journey easier. Thus, not only connecting Sam within the world, but as well as you, the player, with other players. The game does an absolutely great job at intertwining the game's themes with its gameplay, but all of that is Death Stranding 1. In 2025, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach was finally released with much anticipation from not only me and the fans of the first game, but as well as the people who, after some time, thoughts have changed on the first game. And the game was critically praised, resulting in its review score being higher than the first game, but this isn't about the general masses' opinion, but instead my own. And I'll go ahead and say it, I love this game. Exploring Mexico and Australia this time was a nice change of scenery, as this time we were able to explore a good amount of different biomes, with deserty areas being new, as I don't think there was much in the first game. There's also plenty of new gameplay changes that improve the game greatly, with the main one being the gunplay and combat. While you were able to shoot guns and fight enemies in the first game, there weren't many situations where you would want to when compared to BTs, and it sort of felt like you were discouraged to get into gunfights anyways. But in Death Stranding 2, you'll find yourself getting into combat a bit more often with not only the returning mules and BTs, but along with ghosts as well, these humanoid-looking robots. And you'll know this because the number of weapons you're able to craft has gone up in this game, though most of it are just upgraded versions. The soundtrack for this game is as good and vibey as the last one. The modes of travel is expanded, with roads not being the only thing you're able to rebuild, but along with a monorail system that's extremely useful to get fixed, as you'll be able to transport a large amount of resources from one city to another. Then you have the Magellan, which is used as a base of sorts where you can get on it to rest, craft your items, and even fast travel to other shelters or cities. So huge improvement all around on the gameplay. Now, for the story, we get most of the old cast back, which is nice, and along with them, a whole new set of characters, who, like the main cast, are also played by real actors and they do a great job, especially the actor who plays Neil. Now, without trying to spoil much or going for too long, for my overall thoughts on Death Stranding 2, it's kinda conflicting whether I like it more than the first. I mean, in the gameplay department, it absolutely clears it, there's no doubt about that, but when it comes to the story, it left me, again, conflicted. As you might know, the premise for the game is that after a few years of Sam in hiding, Fragile finds him to recruit him, but it consequently leads to Higgs finding out where he lives and kills Lou. And so, throughout the game, the cast is trying to help Sam through his depression and grief, as everyone on the Magellan have also suffered something similar. And again, without spoiling it, there are moments that the story felt predictable on where it was going and just certain events happening, and at one point, it felt like as if the story was just gonna go in one direction, only for it to go somewhere else completely. Which I guess should be expected from a Kojima work, but it felt different here personally. But I guess what's meant to be the overall takeaway from the game is that we need to let go of our past and move on for tomorrow. Not the character, but the actual concept, though the character tomorrow is meant to be a metaphor for that. Not only is this a message that Sam and us, the player, is meant to understand, but I think this is also meant to be a message that Kojima is trying to say to us. Throughout the game, we'll be presented with several Metal Gear references, and don't worry, I won't spoil them, but from an audience and fan point of view, we're clearly meant to be excited to see them, and that's probably going to be the general feeling that most people get. But thinking about the message that the game is trying to tell, in tandem with the references, It could also be said that Kojima wants us to move on from that series, as he has no part in it anymore, nor will he make a new Metal Gear game. Death Stranding in his new works is what he's making now, and that's something his Metal Gear fans have to accept, and that none of his future games will be like Metal Gear again. And that's a pretty interesting takeaway of the game, and I'll be open about this. This isn't an original idea that I had concocted, but it's something that I saw and thought it did work well enough with the game's message. Obviously, it's hard to say if that's something that Kojima wanted to say through the game, but it is an interesting thought. Though I guess it's hard to say it is when one of his future games that he's working on is a tactical espionage game like Metal Gear. So there's that. But even though I say my thoughts are conflicted about this game, I have come back several times to think about my overall thoughts on this game, more so than I have with any of the other games that I mentioned earlier. Well, aside from like Expedition 33, but that's due to a completely different reason. But I do really love Death Stranding 2, and personally, even though it leaves with an ambiguous ending, I think it'd probably be best if the series ends here. Though I wouldn't complain if there's a sequel, but those are my thoughts. With that, it's time to move on to the next layer, starting with the first anime in the 3x3. When it comes to animes that were released this year that I was able to watch, there were only a few that really stood out to me that I can say that I really loved or made an impression on me, but I think I could definitely say that Medalist was one of them. Medalist is an anime about a young girl named Inori who's always been interested in figure skating. However, because of her shy and timid personality, due to her thinking that she isn't great at anything, along with her mother being overly protective of her, she's been unable to pursue her interest in skating. But even so, she desperately wants to fulfill that dream of hers of becoming a great figure skater. On the flip side, we're also introduced to a man named Tsukasa, who was able to become a figure skater. But because he started very late due to not having the income to pay for classes and getting into the sport in middle school, he was never able to fully achieve his dream of getting to an Olympic level to compete in the Olympics. And after his figure skating partner retires, he's offered a position of being a coach. At first he's unsure about it as he doesn't see himself fit to be able to coach. However, that thought changes when he meets Inori and watches her skate and hears of her determination of becoming a figure skater. So in this anime, not only are we following Inori's journey of her growth of becoming a figure skater, but also her self-growth as she discovers to be more confident in herself. It's such a sweet journey to watch as she improves and learns all these different types of techniques that get her better at figure skating. And when we do get to the scenes where we watch her performances, they're always breathtaking to watch. Yes, the anime does use 3D models for these scenes, though unlike other animes where they look off-putting, sort of like in the recent anime, the 3D models they use here look really good. They fit really well within the 3D environment without them looking jarring, and they capture the movements really well as far as I can understand, having only seen a few snippets of actual figure skating. And one thing that they capture really well with the models are the characters' emotions during the skating. It all comes together to perfectly sell the performance as well as make it visible to notice Inori's growth. I should also mention that Inori isn't the only character in this show that we follow who grows, as Tsukasa also grows as a character throughout the first season. Again, since he was late at becoming a figure skater, he's always viewed himself as not being the best, or at least a failure in the figure skating world. But seeing Inori having a bit of those similar feelings, he wants to suppress those thoughts as he wants Inori to stop having those set thoughts, as well as wanting to help her prevent herself from making a decision that she'll forever regret. So you see both of these characters not making these decisions for themselves, but rather in support of each other for their growth. It's a really nice anime that has these tender, suspenseful, and happy moments where you watch these characters become better versions of themselves through the art of figure skating. And with Season 2 right around the corner, I can't wait to see more of this anime. Alright, now it's time to make a complete tonal shift as the next thing on the list is Dexter, but specifically Dexter Resurrected. So if you're a bit of a memester or a meme guy, then you're probably aware how in 2025, there's been a sudden resurgence of Dexter memes. I was able to notice it, however, I was never aware of what the show was or what it was about. I only ever saw the memes, and it was only after a few days of seeing it that I decided to find out what show these memes were from. And that's when I discovered the show Dexter. Again, I was completely unaware of this show's premise or legacy, but after seeing the memes and wanting to get the complete context of the memes, that I decided to sit down and undertake the challenge of watching all 8 seasons of Dexter. And my god, am I a fan now. The premise isn't entirely unique, I would say, at least when comparing it to today's standards, but back when it first aired, it most definitely was. But anyways, yes, in Dexter we follow the titular character Dexter, who is a serial killer that only kills criminals that have escaped through the legal system. It's a masterclass of a show, as everyone in the show plays their characters very well, especially Dexter's actor, Michael C. Hall. I don't know how he does it, but he plays Dexter to perfection. He's somehow able to give this great dual performance where, when playing the serial killer Dexter, he's able to show the cold, chilling, and stoic side of the character that will give you chills. Then, when playing the everyday Dexter, he's able to play up the normalness that the character is trying to perform in front of everyone, hiding this dark secret within him along with the dark passenger. It's done so well. And you get this masterful blend of character writing, acting, direction, and performance all in the first 4 seasons. And then you get to the second half and you're left being disappointed. Yeah, to no one's surprise if you watch the show, the quality just kinda goes downhill when the original writers left after season 4, which was an amazing season with it having my favorite scene.
I am so thankful for you, Arthur.
Shut up, cunt.
And right next to,
It's all about strategy. Outmaneuvering the opposition, bending him to your will.
how much time did he have to download Halo on Miguel's laptop and just learn how to play it? But did they try to remedy the awful last season by making another season, Dexter New Blood, which I also watched? And the reception for this one that I can gather was very mixed, with myself feeling the same way. It's definitely better than the atrocious ending of season 8, and it's kinda cool that we get to see an older Harrison, but for a majority of the season, he just kinda sucked. Well, both him and Dexter, they just both kinda sucked this season. Harrison was just a bit too angsty for my taste, and it was just weird to see Dexter out of his game, making all these sorts of bad decisions, which I get. It's been years since he's killed someone, but come on, man. It also doesn't make sense, especially with what happens in the new season of Dexter that I'm supposed to be talking about, Dexter Resurrection. The title kinda gives away its premise and what happened in the last season. But after getting shot by Harrison in the end of New Blood, Dexter miraculously survives and somehow gets away with everything that happened in the last season. It's a really big ass pull, but the writers were just playing with the cards they were dealt with. So I guess it's kind of forgivable, you be the judge. But after that, Dexter is back. And I don't mean just the character where he now acts how he used to be in the first 4 seasons, but the direction and writing of the show is completely back. And it makes sense why it would, since the writer of the original 4 seasons came back. Sure, it sucks that it still doesn't take place in Miami anymore, with that cool soundtrack and vibe, but in this season, the setup is so cool, and again, Dexter is just in his element. In this season, we follow Dexter uncover this secret club where serial killers get together for a week to hang out. A club that is run by a rich philanthropist that's secretly a huge fan of serial killers. And no, it's not Mr. Beast, okay? So throughout the season, you have Dexter hiding who he really is from the other serial killers as he's trying to pick them off one by one, and it's just amazing to watch. Michael C. Hall, as always, does a fantastic job playing Dexter. Unc still has it. Though that isn't the only plot that we follow, as we also follow Harrison's plotline, where he's trying to live normally after the events of the last season. That is, until he kills someone who was trying to rape a woman he drugged. So we have him trying to hide the fact that he killed someone from the cops, while also trying to be a normal young adult. Slight spoilers for the season, but they do eventually meet again, and when their plots are intertwined, it's more so of Dexter trying to actually be a good father to Harrison, unlike how he was trying to make him a serial killer as well. Once again, it's a really good season and a return to form of the original Dexter. Lots of awkward, funny moments from Dexter, memorable lines dropped by Dexter, great performance from Michael, and of course, lots of great kills. I'm genuinely surprised at how good this revival was because, as we know, we're in the nostalgic revival era of shows, movies, and games, and I feel like some of them just haven't been to the best of quality, or at least they felt like they were just nostalgia baiting to make it a cash grab. But Dexter Resurrection is just a great quality show, and I hope it continues to deliver because it's already confirmed for there to be more seasons, and I just can't wait to watch them. Moving on from a revival of a show to the ending of one within the anime community. The biggest one is, of course, My Hero Academia. As we know, last year, that being 2024, the manga from My Hero Academia came to a conclusion to very mixed, but mostly negative, reactions to its ending. And I was there following its conclusion week by week, and my reaction to its ending was extremely mixed. I, along with many others I'm sure, was in disbelief that the series I've been following since high school was just over. But I also felt a sense of relief because I didn't have to follow it anymore, as, again, I was reading it week to week. And reading the final fight felt exhausting at some points, especially with some of the fake-outs that some chapters ended with. The biggest one, of course, being the Bakugo death. As we're aware, he didn't die in the end, but there was a week where people just kind of thought that he might have died, only for that to not be the case immediately in the next chapter. Again, it just felt kind of frustrating to read with some of these cliffhangers, leaving me soured until its end. But with the anime adaptation that I've also been following, I was ready to see if my thoughts would have changed by then, since the pacing would have been massively different. And since I have it put here, I can confidently say that I liked the ending. I guess knowing what was going to happen, along with having that time to remember certain events, and taking in what was being said, changed my perspective on how I felt about the story. It of course also helps that the animation and line deliveries swayed my thoughts favorably since they were really good. But actually taking the time to think about what the story was trying to go for with its ending, it all came together to me and it ultimately made sense, for the most part. So with the show done with, at least until the OVA episode comes out, I can confidently say that Todoroki's storyline was the more interesting one. I won't go into too much detail about it, cause that might take a long time, but the execution of having his father create a villain due to his abuse and their family trying to reconcile with that, while trying to save Dabi, works so well. I have seen some people dislike the way their storyline ended, with it ending with a comedic tone to the commitment to deciding to redeem Endeavor, which, the comedic tone one, I do sort of dislike, but I think it all works together. While it is true that Endeavor is a massive piece of shit for the abuse and trauma he inflicted to his family, but how I see it is that the show isn't trying to completely redeem him, but rather make it apparent that he's trying to correct the damages that he's done by actually trying to be a better father, and by still carrying the entire weight of the sins he's committed. Well, yes, it is shown that Todoroki and his other family members do redeem him and are also carrying that burden with him. I think it goes to show how much they've grown together through a horrible situation. I'm probably not explaining it well, but the point is, I like their plotline from beginning to end. Then as for Deku's ending, where he gets his Iron Man power armor suit, and he gets to be a hero again, I also do think it works kinda well. I will admit that I was part of the slandering when the manga ended, you know, saying that Deku should put the fries in a bag and all that, but this time, seeing the entire picture and, again, taking in the lines, it all works well and makes sense. I still just find it insane that after almost 10 years, I think, this show that I've had my ups and downs with is finally over. I know there's still some more My Hero Academia to consume, with Vigilantes finally airing, but as for Deku and the gang, it's over. So I'm really interested to see what sort of new work Horikoshi will deliver now that he's done with My Hero Academia. And damn, it's still hard to believe that it's done. And now we reach the final layer, which means we're almost done with the yapping. In this zone, I'll dub it the dick riding layer, which you'll see why as we're starting with the Fujimoto 17-26 one-shots. If you're somehow unaware of the name Tatsuki Fujimoto, then you're most likely aware of his famous work, Fire Punch. It's Chainsaw Man doofus, of course you wouldn't know what Fire Punch is. Knowing that now, then what is Fujimoto 17-26? What do the numbers mean, Mason? Well, Fujimoto 17-26 is a collection of one-shots that were published before he got his big break with Fire Punch and then Chainsaw Man, with the numbers being the age he was when he wrote the one-shots. And with the anime adaptation, each episode is an adaptation of one of the one-shots that were also animated by different studios. If you're a fan of Fujimoto, then this announcement was first off a huge surprise, and you were probably filled with excitement like I was. Before the airing of the anime, I did have the opportunity to read them, as thankfully they were translated and released in the West for fans to enjoy. Now, I'm going to be talking about the manga for a second, but reading each one-shot, you really get to see the progression of not only his art style, but his writing, paneling, and composition as well. It's really worth picking these two volumes up, as again, you really get to see his progression over the years. Another added detail that you get with both volumes is that after each one-shot, you kind of get an insight on Fujimoto's thoughts on them. Some of them are very insightful, with the comments giving reasons as to why the one-shot was written, and a bit of their inspiration, though there's only like one or two that are on the flip side where the comment he makes is very vague and doesn't give any detail as to the reasoning for the one-shot, which, you know, fair enough, not everything would have a reason, I guess. Though for the first volume, on the back, there's enough from Fujimoto himself that gives such a huge insight about him in the journey to making the first one-shot in the volume. Essentially, he recounts a time when he volunteered to clean up the debris from the 2011 tsunami disaster. He goes on describing how, when he arrived at the site, how endless the damage and debris was, and how after working the entire day, they made little to no progress on the cleanup, leaving him and the other people he was grouped with a sense of having accomplished nothing at all. Then, when he arrived the next day, most of the people that were there the previous day didn't even show up. After that, he himself didn't come back, but for different reasons, as he had to pay for supplies for his art class. Though he goes on to add that after that, he began to feel a sense of powerlessness from there on until making Look Back. It might sound a bit parasocial for me to say this, but this note really humanizes Fujimoto, and it shows the thought process of his works, and might even explain a bit of it. But all of this is from the manga volumes. Right now I'm here to talk about the anime, and if it does justice to the one-shots. Which I can say, in some regards, it completely does, while the others, it sort of does. The obvious one that completely blows everything out of the water, in terms of animation, is the first one. A couple clucking chickens were still kicking in the schoolyard. I think part of it is a given since it has a major fight scene at the end, and I think it's also funny how it's the only one-shot that has a focused fight scene, since Fujimoto is currently known for Chainsaw Man, a action fighting manga. Though that isn't to discredit the other one-shot, Shikaku, as it does have an action scene, but it's sort of short compared to the first one. And since I'm talking about Shikaku, I'll mention that this is another favorite of mine within the shorts. It feels a bit rom-com-ish, or maybe something similar to Kindergarten Wars, where it has action, but there's a bit of romance seated within it. It honestly also feels like something that you would see in Chainsaw Man. Another standout within the first volume adaptation is Sasaki Stop the Bullet, and most of it has to do with the premise and direction. I really like how the anime does well with the buildup of things getting a bit more tense to the moment where the intruder shoots Sasaki and then him catching the bullet. Another detail that's pretty noticeable is how Monogatari it feels, though I'm unsure if it's meant to be a reference, but I'd say the odds aren't that low. The adaptation loves doing this bit where it would cut to text on the screen where it has the line written out, or cut to some random imagery related to what's being said or the current situation. I'm likely to believe that it is meant to be a reference, since Fujimoto has stated he's a fan of the Monogatari series. Though that aside, I personally like this short with the setup and the message that it tells. Though if there's one negative thing that I have to comment on, it's the random use of CGI at the end when Sasaki is on the moon. It looks so jarring and off-putting. For Love is Blind, I did also enjoy this one as well, though I'm unsure as to the reasoning for some of the weird color imagery and the metaphorical use of the whale. The blue and pink colors I can probably guess, as those colors are closely associated with gender. Blue equals boys and pink equals girls, and those colors are respectfully shown when either of them is on screen. Now, for the second volume portion, my favorite without a doubt has to be Sisters. The way that I, and many others would describe it, is that it's the prototype or younger sibling to Look Back, and it's pretty obvious to see why, as even Fujimoto describes it as the foundation to it. Though, even with that being the case, I feel like it's a bit of a disservice to the one-shot itself, as it's pretty much its own thing when you compare it to Look Back. Sure, they share sort of similar themes on the surface, but when analyzing it and referring to Fujimoto's comments, you start to understand that they're written with different purposes and are trying to say different things on a deeper level, with Look Back being more of an outlet for Fujimoto's suppressed feelings that he's built up, and Sisters being a comment on how art can say a lot to a person. Which I feel like is backed up with how, within the one-shot, the teacher shares the assignment of the painting was personal goal, and with that, the painting told how the younger sister strived to be as good as her older sister. At least, this is how I see this work in the comparison between Look Back and Sisters. You may call it surface level analyzing, but those were my thoughts coming out of it. So yeah, those Gunnar art that I like on Twitter are actually more than just hot sexy anime women. There's meaning behind them, goddammit. Another favorite is Nayuta of the Prophecy. In terms of the anime, it's kinda stylized closely to the Chainsaw Man anime, which could be either a turn-off for some, or accepted for some. As for the plot though, I find it kind of endearing, and I feel like you'll only like this if you've been in the sort of similar situation as the older brother. Not the part where you have a literal demon sibling, but rather having a sibling or family member that you don't have this close connection with, so much so that you don't really understand them on a personal level. But by actually taking that step to understand them and breaking down that barrier, you understand that they're more than what you perceive them as on the outer level. And that sort of is what happens in the one-shot, as soon as the older brother realizes that Nayuta does care about him and meant to help him, he realizes that she's just a normal little sister, and he hasn't been acting like a true older brother to her. So I find it endearing in that aspect. I've also seen how Nayuta could also be a stand-in for a special needs person, and how for an average person who doesn't understand what it's like to be in that situation, it's hard for them to make that connection until they actually learn about it. And for that, I can totally see that. Not sure if I completely subscribe to the interpretation, but again, I could totally see it. Okay, repeating myself here, but Woke Up as a Girl Syndrome is another favorite because it's another idea where you wonder why Fujimoto thought of this, but the tone is taken seriously, though with some slight comedy to it. The anime really does this one justice, and it perfectly amplifies the, I guess, horror aspect to it. Not of the guy turning into a girl, but instead how differently he's treated because of becoming a girl. It amplifies how disgusting boys would act when someone transitions, with them trying to pressure Toshihide to have sex with them. Not only that, but also how their partner could react, with having internal thoughts that have them wondering if their transition partner has different feelings for the opposite sex. Now, I've been sort of saying it, but still kind of tiptoeing around the subject/word, but whether it is true or not, this story does feel like it's an allegory for trans people. It just sort of makes sense if it is, but it's hard to know if that is the intent for the short, as Fujimoto doesn't comment anything on that. But if you read his other works, you pretty much know that he's knowledgeable on the subject and is an ally, as he's pretty serious about it when he writes a character that is trans. I really love this work, and I honestly would suggest watching the anime version, as again, it amplifies what I mentioned better than what's in the manga. But of course, I still suggest reading the original work. Then finally, there's Mermaid Rhapsody, which is the most normal one-shot out of the bunch, and that's by intent as stated by Fujimoto. Though how I see this one is more on how he's gotten better at drawing details and having more scenic scenes. It's hard to see that in the anime since when you're putting it along with the other adaptations that are cleaned up, and I'm saying that with quotes, but I guess it's better to say they're as detailed as it. But in the manga, you see him add more scenic shots as it primarily takes place underwater or near the seaside. So I would say out of the entirety of the adaptation, this one by far is the weakest, as you aren't able to see the progression being made. One last thing I'll comment before I move on is that I think this is where Fujimoto finds his love for adding romantic and I guess idyllic scenes, as there's a section that has just that. And you see him use it in his future works where they're usually impactful or important scenes, like he immediately uses it in Nayuta, then in Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man. I really went on with this one, more so than I thought, but I really did enjoy these one-shots and the adaptations, as I'm sure you can tell, a huge fan of Fujimoto. So if you haven't watched or read the shorts and you're now interested after this, I highly recommend reading them first. I really think you lose quite a bit when you don't see the progression first, as if you're to watch the anime without any sort of context, you really lose a bit of nuance to it. So again, highly recommend reading them first, and it's best to get the volumes for the comments from Fujimoto, even if they might not add anything of substance to you. Now for the second to last 3x3 choice is Takopi's Original Sin. The anime, not the manga. When the anime adaptation for this was announced, this took me by complete surprise, as the manga wasn't that popular or known. I mean, back when I made a video about this manga, which you should totally watch or something, there weren't that many people talking about it, and I made it right around the time it ended. I won't be going into detail about its plot, as I've already done so in my old Takopi video, though what I said there will probably be different from what I say now. The adaptation is brutal, and it does a fantastic job at having you lower your guard due to its atmosphere before punching you in the gut with its twist. Though I guess it isn't that subtle about hiding it. It's an all-around perfect adaptation, being able to present this horrible subject matter that these kids are going through in a horrible light, while also showing that within that darkness, there is a light that they're able to find. In that video, I said how I didn't really get it, and summing it all up to bullying is bad or whatnot, but re-experiencing the story, it's obvious that what it's trying to say is that in our deepest of lows, we need that someone we can connect with or talk to, as well as showing how abusive households can really mess up a child. In the story, we clearly see Shizuka, Marina, and Naoki eternally suppressing their problems and having really horrible parents who neglect them and abuse them. Shizuka's mother is an escort and is acting as a homewrecker to Marina's family, and we see how she doesn't really take care of Shizuka, and because of that, Shizuka gets bullied by Marina to the point where she thinks about suicide. For Marina, her mother emotionally and physically abuses her, and due to that, she lets out her frustrations to Shizuka because of her mother, as if she wasn't hooking up with her dad, then her family wouldn't be so fucked up. Then for Naoki, because his mom emotionally abuses him by having such unreasonably high expectations out of him, it causes Naoki to find a way to prove he's smart and can be depended on, leading to him helping Shizuka hide Marina's body, as well as her escape plan to find her dog. And it's only until they find someone that they could connect with, for Marina and Shizuka being each other, and for Naoki being his older brother, that they're able to move past their abuse. I might have spoiled a bit about it, but it's something else I highly recommend watching, as it's a pretty good story, and the anime adapts it really perfectly. Though be warned if I wasn't already clear enough, but this anime is really dark with what it shows that it might be hard to watch, especially if you've been through the same sort of thing. So I'd say look a bit into it before watching to see if you're comfortable with actually watching it through completion. But with that, let's move on to our final thing on the 3x3. And now we reach the last thing in the 3x3, and it's something I knew I was going to love before watching and definitely love after. And well guys, let's just say that thing is the Demon Slayer movie. I'm joking, get that shit out of here. It's of course the Chainsaw Man movie, goddammit. I think I've already shown and explained that I'm a Fujimoto fan, nay, a dick writer, so it would make complete sense that I was pretty excited for the Reze movie. After the first season ended back in 2022, that I personally enjoyed, I was left starving for the next season that they nicely teased with Reze appearing in the credits. Then when it was announced that the Reze arc was going to be its own movie, I was even further excited to see what they would accomplish in a movie format. However, my excitement would then turn to worry as there was no scheduled release window and we were left hanging for 3 years with no info on the movie. But since then, the movie has come out, and for weeks, I was counting down the days until the movie's release, watching the trailers as many times as I can to quell my excitement. Listening to Kenshi's OP for the movie, Iris Out, on repeat, cause damn that song is a banger. Then when the movie finally did come out, I made sure to watch it the first day that I could. With my friends of course. Though sadly, I wasn't able to get the Pochita popcorn bucket. I was also further upset when I found out that in Japan, they were handing out a special volume that had exclusive art and side content from Fujimoto for the movie. Okay, exclusive merch aside, as a Chainsaw Man and Fujimoto fan, were my expectations met for this movie? Well, that's a dumb question to ask since it's on this very list. It met it and went well above it. The first notable thing you'll notice when watching the movie is the difference in color tone from the first season. As I'm aware, some people didn't like how muted the colors were for the first season. I myself didn't mind it, as I feel like it fit for the most part, and thought it made it look unique. But after watching the movie, it's obvious that having some colors would have made the first season a bit better. or at least visually better. It definitely makes the world in certain scenes, specifically the fights, look more livelier, which I guess is the word I'm using. Other than that, I love seeing the cast back, as well as the new devils that were barely introduced in the last season. Violence Fiend was cool, even though we got little from him. Angel was nice to see, and it really felt like the animators added some Fujoshi scenes with him and Naki, which I thought was funny. Beam was funny, though every time he talked, I was only able to hear Tanjiro and Okarun. It was upsetting that Power only appears for the first couple of minutes, which is something that I completely forgot about, so again, that was sad. Then there's Reze, who was the star of the movie, which, saying that sounds idiotic to say since the movie is about her. Though, what I mean is that the VA really sells her and makes you love her throughout the movie. The movie does a great job at selling her as this bubbly girl who's into Denji, while subtly hinting that there's more to her. Until the reveal at the school, which they do a perfect job of making her a threat. And the school scene, my god, definitely one of the best parts of the movie, right next, of course, to the fight between Denji and her. The pool scene is just a well-directed scene showing Denji and Reze being open to one another, this moment of them having this intimate moment together. With Reze setting all this up, knowing that she'll have to kill Denji for his heart, but deep inside, whether she knows it or not, she actually loves him. It's just a perfect scene, as well as a twist reveal when Reze kills the random American killer, as she unveils her real self, being this trained killer that she had no choice of becoming, that she hates. It's all really well done. Then of course there's the fight between her and Denji, and my god, I think it tops the Sukuna and Maharaga fight in JJK. Which makes sense that it would, since it has a movie budget, so a bit of an unfair comparison. But that fight is a masterclass of animation, and it's something that I think everyone could get behind, saying that it's just beautiful. Leagues better than the Demon Slayer movie. Sorry, but the Slenderer within me had to say that. After seeing this movie though, it just makes me all the more excited for the next season, though it also saddens me because it just means we possibly have to wait longer for it. I know MAPPA recently announced that they're getting ready to work on it, but who knows when they'll air. But I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this movie. It's definitely one of the best films of this year, though I don't know if I can say that since there's 100 meters, which I haven't seen yet. So that movie might appear in my 2026 3x3 if I decide to do that. But once again, overall, the Chainsaw Man movie was really good. But that's my 3x3 list from the things I enjoyed in 2025. There were plenty of good things all around, and it makes me happy knowing that the medium of gaming, anime/animation, and shows keep getting better. Of course though, as they get better, the longer things begin to take, which is upsetting for most, but it's something that we have to accept, otherwise we get something like One Punch Man Season 3. Sorry, I had to mention that. 2026 already seems to have a great amount of stuff waiting to be released for both anime and gaming that I just can't wait to sink my time into, so who knows what will surprise me. I know this was lengthy, but again, there was just a lot that I enjoyed in 2025, and there were more that I wasn't even able to cover. But if you did enjoy this video, leave a like and a cheer since that's a new thing on mobile. And if you want to share what you also liked in 2025 or something you liked from my list, leave that in the comments. As well as letting me know if you're interested in seeing something like this again for 2026. Anyways, with the year gone by the time I upload this, I hope great things await in 2026, so see you guys next time and have a damn good one.